Hey guys, Elisa Mousy here, and welcome to the last Dragon Age Origins Codex video. So, we missed a bit in places, which is unfortunate, but items. Oh boy, some of these are going to be long. I don't know how long this video is going to be. In 884 Blessed, Lord Aurelian of Montsemard, champion of the Grand Tourney of Ansberg, commissioned a sword for his youngest son, Lewis, not Leus. Wow. Lewis, who aspired to the Chevaliers. Insisting that his boy have nothing but the best, Lord Aurelian sought out the most renowned master smith in the Orlesian Empire, Versailles of Halam-Sharal, who was at the time nearly 80, and begged the old man to make the blade. Versailles refused. His sight was failing him, and he had no wish to come out of retirement. But Aurelian offered an exorbitant sum of gold and eventually overcame the artisan's resistance. The old master labored for several months, folding steel, honing the edge to perfection. The resulting blade was as long as a man is tall, and sharp as the tongue of any noblewoman. Versailles proclaimed it to be his greatest work and named it, in a fit of irony, the Summer Sword, since he had crafted it in the winter of his lifetime. Lord Aurelian brought Louis with him to receive the sword from the hand of the old master. When the boy saw the Summer Sword, he turned up his nose at his father's gift. Such great two-handed blades were no longer in fashion at court. He preferred an estoc. Aurelian was mortified. He insisted that Louis carry the blade and apologized to Versailles, but to no avail. The swordsmith cursed the boy, saying that for his pride, regardless of the blade he carried, he would fail anyway. Louis was eventually knighted, and he joined the ranks of the Chevaliers. In 898 Blessed, he was appointed command of the Chevaliers in Denerim, and hoped to make a name for himself. And so he did. He was the most detested Chevalier in Ferelden, well known for his acts of depravity. In 9-1 Dragon, he met Loghain mac Tyr in battle at Avanash. Louis lost his estoc early in the fight, became separated from his men, and ended up facing down Loghain himself, armed only with the Summer Sword, which he had never before drawn. Practice might have saved him where pride did not. Loghain made short work of the pompous Chevalier and took the greatsword as a trophy. Culture and history. Parvolin, the occupied north. In the 30th year of the Steel Age, the first Qunari ships were sighted off the coast of Parvolin in the far north, marking the beginning of a new age of warfare. History calls this the First Qunari War, but it was mostly a one-sided bloodbath, with the Qunari advancing far into the mainland. Qunari warriors in glinted steel armor carved through armories with ease. Their cannons, the likes of which our ancestors had never seen, reduced city walls to rubble in a matter of seconds. Stories of Qunari occupation vary greatly. It is said they dismantled families and sent captives to learning camps for indoctrination into their religion. Those who refused to cooperate disappeared into mines or construction camps. For every tale suffering, however, there is another of enlightenment deriving from something called the Qun. This is either a philosophical code or a written text that governs all aspects of Qunari life, perhaps both. One converted Saharan reported pity for those who refused to embrace the Qun, as if the conquerors had led him to a sort of self-discovery. For all my life I followed the Maker wherever his path led me, he wrote, but in the Qun I have found the means to travel my own path. It has been said that the most complete way to wipe out a people is not with blades but with books. Thankfully, a world that had repelled 4 blights would not easily bow to a foreign aggressor, and so the exalted marches began. The greatest advantage of the Chantry-led forces was the Circle of Magi. For all their technology, the Qunari appeared to harbor great hatred for magic. Faced with cannons, the Chantry responded with lightning and balls of fire. The Qunari armies lacked the sheer numbers of humanity. So many were slain at Marnas Pel on both sides that the Vale is said to be permanently sundered, the ruins still plagued by restless corpses. But each year, the Chantry pushed further and further into the Qunari lines, although local converts to the Qun proved difficult to return to Andraste's teachings. By the end of the Storm Age, the Qunari were truly pushed back. Rivain was the only human land that retained the Kunari religion after being freed, and its rulers attempted to barter a peace. Most human lands signed the Lomarin Accord, excepting the Tevinter Imperium. It is a shaky peace that has lasted to this day. From the Exalted Marches, an examination of Chantry warfare by Sister Patrine, Chantry scholar. Vendal, the Tree of the People. Most of the old ways are gone. Each generation forgets a little more of the old tongue, a little more of the traditions, and the few things we keep become simple habits, the meaning long since faded. So it is with the Venedal, the Tree of the People. Every alienage has one, I'm told, or they used to. When I was a little girl, my mother told me the tree was a symbol of our Lathan, but not even she knew more. Keeping the Venedal was just a habit now. Many cities have let theirs wither and die, then chopped them up for firewood. No great loss. Serethia Haran of the High-Ever alienage. We have more stuff for characters. Queen Honora. I don't know if we even had anything from her, so... The only child of the war hero Logain Mactir. Honora has never been one to stay quietly in the background. It is common knowledge that in the 5 years Honora and Kaelin held the throne together, she was the one wielding the power. She is held in much higher esteem than her husband by the people of Ferelden, nobility, and commoners alike, and commands the respect even of foreign nations, having once inspired Empress Selene of Orlais to declare Honora of Ferelden is a solitary rose among brambles. She sent her maid Erlina to Arl Eamon's estate to ask for Kahari's help in escaping from Arl Howe, but as they fled Howe's estate, Honora in disguise, they were ambushed by Sir Catherine, there to arrest Howe's murderer. A fight ensued, and Honora fled in the confusion. She made her way to Eamon's Denerim estate, and then there offered her aid in defeating her father at the Landsmeet. However, when the hour came, she publicly supported her father, decreeing the wardens as slanderers and regicides. The bands fell in line behind Logain, and he called for the warden's execution. Fighting erupted, breaking the long tradition of the Landsmeet, which was ultimately settled with a duel. In the end, Honora was granted the throne, freeing Alistair from the burden of a responsibility he never wanted anyway. Sir Catherine. Catherine came to Logain's service the hard way. She belonged to a poor family and was out doing work on the farm when she saw a man on horseback being attacked by several bandits. She rushed to his assistance and found out belatedly that the man she saved was none other than the great hero Logain. Though she was hardly more than a child, he took her in, offering her a position with his soldiers, and she climbed through the ranks through sheer determination. Becoming the commander of Merrick's Shield, Logain's elite soldiers, she was the proudest moment in her life. She was slain while trying to stop Kahari from entering the Landsmeet. He calls his elite soldiers Merrick's Shield, and he leaves Merrick's son to die. Arl Eamon Garin. Let's start here. He fell ill with a mysterious condition that even magic could not treat. It was no common ailment. Eamon was poisoned by a blood mage, Jowan, who claimed to be working for Taron Logain. The Arl's life was saved only by the most extraordinary measures, finding the urn of sacred ashes, the remains of Andraste herself. His health restored, Eamon called the Landsmeet with the goal of wresting power from Logain and placing Alistair on the throne. With the question of the succession settled, Eamon returned to Redcliffe to prepare the castle's defenses for the encroaching blight. Brother Ferdinand Genitivi. Brother Genitivi is one of the Chantry's most well-known scholars, primarily on the basis of the stories he has published, which many of his contemporaries dismiss as fanciful, of his travels across the length and breadth of Thedas. His travels, and rather too curious nature, led him to a study of folklore, which gave him the notion that he could track down that most debated of all artifacts, the Urn of Sacred Ashes. He announced that he had found what appeared to be the trail of the urn, left in the legends of the regions through which it had passed from Minrathous on its way into hiding. And he appeared to have been right. The final resting place of Andraste lay at the summit of a remote mountain. He returned to Denerim a little worse for wear, and was granted funds and manpower to mount an expedition to study the temple in which the urn is kept. Arl Rendon Howe. The Arling of Amaranthine Amaranthine winds along the sinuous northeastern coast of Ferelden. The waking sea is known for its temper, and the storms that sweep in from the warmer northern waters are sudden and brutal. These are the lands of Rendon Howe. He was born during the occupation, and like many of the nobles at the time, joined Prince Merrick's rebels. He fought alongside young Bryce Cousland, future Terran of Highever, and Leonis Bryland, future Arl of Southreach, at the bloody Battle of White River. It was the most catastrophic defeat of the entire occupation, from which only 50 rebel soldiers escaped alive. Although he was decorated for valor by King Merrick, Howe's abrasive manners have earned him almost universal dislike among his peers. Howe died at the hands of Kahari in Denerim. Logain Macteal. Yeah, some of this stuff is going to be kind of rereads, but he then returned to Denerim and declared himself the regent to his daughter Queen Anora, demanding that Ferelden follow him against the Darkspawn, upsetting a great many of the bands. His actions sparked a civil war. Logain's supporters found themselves fighting their neighbors who blamed Logain for the death of their king, as well as those who simply wished to take advantage of the power vacuum. He was defeated in single combat at the Landsmeet and summarily executed. Valendrian. Every alienage has a Haran, an elder. It falls to the Haran to arrange marriages for those without family, to negotiate with the guards when there's trouble, and to act as a sort of mayor and surrogate uncle to the people of the alienage. The title, like so many things, is a holdover from the time of Arlathan, for Harans are not necessarily the oldest person in their community, or even all that old. Tradition gives the role to the oldest soul, the wisest, cleverest, and the most level-headed. Valendrian has been Haran of the Denerim alienage since he was in his 30s. He was nearly shipped to Vinter by slavers, but was returned to the alienage by Kahari. Severin. I think just this last one, right? Severin shows an affinity for the... No, didn't we read that? Severin was the crew contacted by Logain to assassinate Alistair and Kahari. One failed attempt later, however, he found himself at the mercy of his would-be victims. They showed him unexpected mercy, and in return, he swore to aid the Wardens on their quest to end the Blight. Severin shows an affinity for the finer things in life, hardly surprising for an Antivan crow, but his appreciation can be more poetic than he lets on. A simple bar of refined silver or gold, uncomplicated by craftsman hammer, is elegantly valuable. I would have thought that that would have added something to after he got released by the crows. Maybe that's another, like, minor glitch. I don't know. Oh my god, there are so many books and songs. Oh my god. I don't know if we have this one or not, so I guess we'll read it. Oh my god. Oh, this might be a little long, and I hope my voice doesn't give out. Aveline was born to an Orlesian farmer near the city of Halam Sharal in the early half of the Storm Age. She was a large and ugly baby, and her father had hoped for a boy. Not wanting another mouth to feed, the farmer left Aveline in the woods to die from exposure. But a traveling band of Dalish elves came upon the crying child. The elves took her into their clan and raised her as their own. They taught her archery, dueling, and survival skills. When she came of age, she was larger and stronger than most women, let alone elven women. Her adoptive parents knew that she was a fine warrior, so they encouraged her to enter a human tournament in nearby Montsamard, but women were not permitted to join the knighthood in Orlais, nor to compete in a tournament, so Aveline joined the tournament as a man. Her clan forged a suit of armor with a full helm and gave her an ironbark sword of the finest quality. Aveline entered the competition claiming to be a knight of Antiva. She refused to doff her helmet even during the archery competition. And sure enough, Aveline bested many other knights until, in the grand melee, she came upon Kaleva, a knight who served the emperor and was considered the finest in the land. Kaleva was determined not to be beaten, and struck swiftly and strongly. As Aveline matched each of his blows, Kaleva grew ever more frustrated. Finally, in desperation, he tripped Aveline and threw her to the ground. The blow knocked her helm from her head, and Kaleva was shamed. He called to have the competition declared invalid, but the crowd booed and jeered. In anger, Kaleva turned and slew Aveline as she lay helpless. The son of the emperor, Prince Fran, was also present at the tourney. He too had been beaten by Aveline, but he recognized her skill and bravery and was saddened by the injustice of her death. Upon rising to the emperor's seat in 744 Storm, Fran abolished the law that disallowed women from joining the Orlesian knighthood and posthumously knighted Aveline. Although women in the Orlesian knighthood are still a rarity today, all those who do become knights revere Sir Aveline as their patron. Aveline, Knight of Orlais, by Lord Francois Maigny, 8-4 Blessed. The Ballad of Aisley. The wind that stirs their shallow graves carries their song across the sands. Heed our words, hear our cry, the grey are sworn, in peace we lie. Heed our words, heed our cry, our names recalled, we cannot die. When darkness comes and swallows light, heed our words, and we shall rise. Then the Ballad of Aisley, said to have been written after the Battle of Aisley, which ended the Fourth Blight, 520 Exalted. Meditations and Ode to Bees. O fair damsel of the garden, our Lessa of honeysuckle and rose, I humbly beg your gracious pardon for the offence that here arose. Surely your work is far too vital to be interrupted by one like me. I am in no way entitled to earn the notice of a honeybee. I was a fool to pluck that flower for my lady fair. On my honour, I swear to bring you dozens more within the hour, if you give me leave to try. Listen, traveller, if you would walk the garden path some spring, mind that you don't trespass, for the gardeners do sting. Anonymous. The Holy Brazier. The brazier that stands atop the stairs of the great hall of our temple has always been something of a mystery to us. This is the brazier that created the beings we call the Ash-Wraiths. This is where Andraste's followers immolated themselves and became the eternal guardians of her temple. I have painstakingly pieced together information from old books and from the tales and half-truths passed down to us by our forefathers. I believe I now understand the ritual used to create the wraiths. The brazier was lit with a consecrated taper, its flame taken from the everlasting fire that long ago consumed Andraste herself. The chosen disciple would fast and pray for weeks, taking into his body nothing but a sip of water a day. When the disciple was finally ready, he would place in his mouth a flawless black pearl and step into the flames. In ancient Tevinter, black pearls were thought to be magical, able to stop the soul from passing through the veil when held in the mouth at the moment of death. Thus Andraste's disciples consigned themselves to eternal flame. They became dust and ashes and rose again and again to protect the most beloved of the Maker. The Legend of Calenhad, Chapter 1. Oh boy. Prior to the crowning of King Calenhad, Ferelden was little more than a collection of independent Arlings and Terniers that warred on each other constantly over petty matters. Calenhad was born in 510 Exalted as the third son of a high-ever merchant on hard times. He was eventually sent to a distant cousin, a poor young knight named Sir Foranan, who made Calenhad his squire and dog handler. As the tale goes, Sir Foranan and his squire became caught up in one of the wars of unity at the time. Arl Mirden was a strong but generally disliked man who was making a bid for kingship. Foranan's own lord, a young fool of an Arl named Tenedor, was no older than Calenhad, was besieged by Mirden's forces at his castle, today known as West Hill. When Mirden called Tenedor out to parley, the young Arl asked for a volunteer among the squires, someone who could masquerade as Tenedor for the parley party. Calenhad kneeled before Tenedor and asked for the honor. Much to Tenedor's and Sir Foranan's dismay, Calenhad immediately identified himself to Arl Meriden. When asked by the Arl why he was here, Calenhad explained that he had been asked to take the place of his lord. The Arl said that he had planned to kill Tenedor. Was Calenhad willing to die at his lord's place as well? Calenhad impressed Mirden and his allies by saying that he was. Mirden offered Calenhad a place as his own squire, but Calenhad refused, stating that if Mirden had planned on betraying the right of parley, he was no man of honor. Mirden's allies laughed at that, and Mirden himself conceded that Calenhad had a point. He allowed Calenhad to return to the castle safely and launched his final assault. During the assault, both Tenedor and Foranan were killed, but Calenhad found himself in one-on-one combat with the Arl Mirden. In front of all Mirden's allies, Calenhad defeated the Arl and commanded he call off his armies. The Earl asked Calenhad who he professed to serve now, if both his knight and his lord were dead, to which Calenhad replied that he would do as his honour bade him to, for he had nothing else. "You are not a man known for your honour," Calenhad said, "but I believe you wish to be. You allowed me to live once, and so now I do the same for you. Perhaps if more of our people lived by honour, we would learn to trust each other long enough to live together." And with that, Calenhad withdrew his sword. "I am humbled by your words," Arl Mirrodin told Calenhad, dropping to one knee. To his allies he shouted that he now knew he would never be king, but he knew who should be. With that, Mirrodin pledged allegiance to Calenhad, whom he named Tairn and the ruler of Tanador's lands. From the Legend of Calenhad by Brother Heron, Chantry Scribe 810 Blessed. The Legend of Calenhad, Chapter 2. With the allegiance of Arl Mirrodin, Calenhad began his rise to greatness. Some of Mirrodin's allies also pledged allegiance, but most thought him foolhardy. A boy commoner was to lead them and become king? Over the years that followed, however, Calenhad would prove himself worthy of Mirrodin's trust. With each victory, he won over more men to his command, and his reputation as a man of honor spread. Eventually, during his campaign against the lowland Banorn, he met his most infamous friend and companion, the vaunted warrior Lady Shaina. Calenhad married the famously beautiful daughter of Mirrodin, Marin, I guess, and his firm belief in the ways of the Chantry became the staple of his court. In a time when the Chantry was still new to the lands and courts following Andraste held the majority of the power in Ferelden, Calenhad began to solidify the nation as one in line with the other nations around it. This piety eventually won over to Calenhad those faithful in Ferelden who had been waiting for such a leader. With Lady Shaina at his side, Calenhad was unstoppable, and by 542 Exalted, the war for Ferelden had come down to one final battle against the collected forces of Simeon, Tairn of Denerim, and the most potent nobleman in the land. Calenhad persuaded the Circle of Magi to come to his aid, as well as the Ash Warriors, and in the Battle of White Valley he famously defeated Tairn, Simeon, and united the nation. During the battle, Simeon nearly killed Calenhad, but Lady Shaina intervened and took the wound for him, slaying Simeon. Calenhad was crowned king in Denerim that year, with Marin his queen, but he spent much of the months that followed nursing Lady Shaina back to health. King Calenhad's Ferelden was peaceful for a time, with the Chantry spreading quickly under the king's guidance. Everywhere the king and queen went, they were surrounded by cheering crowds. The common folk celebrated Calenhad as one of their own who had achieved the impossible, and trade opened up with many outside lands for the first time in Ferelden's existence. But as with many such golden ages, it was not to last. From the Legend of Calenhad by Brother Heron, Chantry Scribe 810 Blessed. My throat is starting to give out on me, guys, and I don't have any water here with me. We have a problem. The Legend of Calenhad, Chapter 3. Calenhad legend tells that Lady Shaina harbored a love for her king that went beyond friendship, a love that she had kept secret out of her sense of duty and honor. When offered a love potion by a witch in disguise, a witch who would later turn out to be the vengeance-seeking sister of Arl Simeon, Lady Shaina gave in to temptation. She used the potion on Calenhad, but Queen Marin discovered the two of them together that night, and broken-hearted, fled Denerim to return to her father. She told Mirrodin everything, and he angrily threatened to revoke his support of Calenhad and began anew the civil war. It is said that Lady Shaina felt remorseful at her manipulation of her best friend's heart and confessed her use of forbidden magic to the court. Although her life was forfeit, Calenhad forgave Lady Shaina for what she had done and refused to have her executed. Mirrodin furiously roused the other Arls against Calenhad and Lady Shaina, but it was not long before Ferelden stood on the brink of civil war once again. Against Calenhad's orders, Lady Shaina went alone to Marin to plead for peace and plead her case, only to be found out by Mirrodin and slain. Angered but also saddened, Calenhad challenged Mirrodin to an honor duel, a fight neither of them wanted but both knew was necessary, and Mirrodin was slain. The death of the king's greatest ally, an important Arl, was too much for the young kingdom to bear. The other Arls would not back down in their claims against Calanhad. The threat of civil war rose once again. Calanhad went to his wife one last time then, although none know what he said to her, and then he simply vanished. He had left with Meryn a proclamation abdicating his throne in favor of the son his queen carried in her belly, who eventually ascended to the throne as King Waelin I, the king credited with establishing the Theron dynasty, lasting to this day. Calanhad would never reappear. The legend of Calanhad himself only grew over time as stories and sightings multiplied, even long after the point when Calanhad could possibly still be alive. Some say he disappeared into the Korcari wilds, or went to live with the dwarves, or even became a monk in a reclusive chantry order. The chantry named Calanhad one of the anointed in 788 Storm. Calanhad's sword, Nemetos, was left with Meryn and became a symbol of Ferelden kingship over the next century. Rumors of its magical powers grew, and when it was lost in the ambush that killed King Venedrin in 824 Blessed, it was seen as a great blow to the Theron line. Several false swords have appeared since that time, but never has the true sword resurfaced. From the Legend of Calanhad by Brother Heron, Chantry Scribe 810 Blessed. Why is Chantry Scribe so hard to say? Jesus. The History of the Chantry, Chapter 2. Oh my god. Anything that is a chapter is long, which I guess makes sense, unless you're James Patterson. who I love. I love that author, by the way. That's not a complaint. When the prophet Andraste and her husband Mafrath arrived at the head of their barbarian horde, southern Tevinter was thrown into chaos. The Imperium had defended against invasions in the past, but now they stood without the protection of their gods, with their army in tatters and their country devastated by the blight. Many felt that the timing of the invasion was yet another of the Maker's miracles in Andraste's campaign to spread his divine word. Andraste was more than simply the wife of a warlord, after all. She was also the betrothed of the Maker. Enraptured by the melodic sound of her as she sang to the heavens for guidance, the Maker himself appeared to Andraste and proposed that she come with him, leaving behind the flawed world of humanity. In her wisdom, Andraste pleaded with the Maker to return to his people and create paradise in the world of men. The Maker agreed, but only if all of the world would turn away from the worship of false gods and accept the Maker's divine commandments. Armed with the knowledge of the one true God, Andraste began the exalted march into the weakened Imperium. One of the Maker's commandments, that magic should serve man rather than rule over him, was as honey to the souls of the downtrodden Tevinter, who lived under the thumbs of the Magisters. Word of Andraste's exalted march, of her miracles and military successes, spread far and wide. Those in the Imperium who felt the old gods had abandoned them eagerly listened to the words of the Maker. Those throngs of restless citizens that destroyed temples now did so in the name of the Maker and his prophet Andraste. As Mafrath's armies conquered the lands of southern Tevinter, so did Andraste's words conquer hearts. It is said that the Maker smiled on the world at the Battle of Valerian Fields, in which the forces of Mafrath challenged and defeated the greatest army Tevinter could muster. The southern reaches of the mighty Imperium now lay at the mercy of barbarians. Faith in the Maker, bolstered by such miracles, threatened to shake the foundations of the Imperium apart. Of course, the human heart is more powerful than the greatest weapon, and when wounded, it is capable of the blackest of deeds. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas, by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. History of the Chantry, Chapter 3. It is said that at the Battle of Valerian Fields, Mafrath stood and looked out over his armies. He had conquered the southern reaches of the greatest empire the world had ever known, and built splintered barbarian clans into a force to be feared. With pride in his heart, he turned to congratulate his men and found that they had turned from him. Mafrath fell to the evil of jealousy. After all that he had done, his wife was the one to receive all the glory. He saw his wife's power and influence, and tired of his place as second husband below the Maker. His heart swelled with fury. If he had conquered just to have his wife wrested from him by a forgotten god and a legion of faith-hungry rabble, then perhaps this war was not worth the trouble. Here history and the chant of light come apart. History tells us that Mafrath looked north into the central Imperium and saw nothing but more war against a rapidly regrouping army, and he despaired. The Chant of Light holds that Mafrath chafed with jealousy of the Maker and jealousy of the glory that Andraste received, although it was he who led the armies. Mafrath traveled to the imperial capital of Minrathous to speak with the Archon Hessarian. There he offered up his wife to the Imperium in return for a truce that would end hostilities once and for all. The Archon, eager to put down the voice of the prophet that stirred his own people against him, agreed. Mafrath led Andraste into an ambush where she was captured by Imperial agents, putting an end to her exalted march. Crowds of loyalists stood in the central square of Minrathous to watch Andraste's execution. By command of the Archon, she was burned at the stake in what the Imperium believed to be the most painful punishment imaginable. According to the Chantry, however, Andraste was instead purified and made whole by the flames, ascending to life at her Maker's side. By all accounts, there was only silence where they expected screams. At the sight of the prophet burning, the crowds were filled with a profound guilt, as if they had participated in a great blasphemy. So moving was the moment that the Archon himself drew his sword and thrust it into the prophet's heart, ending her torment and leaving those assembled to consider the weight of what they had seen. Whereas the execution of Andraste was meant to be a symbol of defeat for the faith of the Maker, in truth it all but sealed the fate of the worship of the old gods and paved the way for the spread of the Maker's chant. From Tales of Destruction of Thetis by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar. That is also apparently very hard to say. The History of the Chantry, Chapter 4. The crowds present at the death of Andraste were right to feel despair. It is believed that the prophet's execution angered the Maker, and he turned his back on humanity once more, leaving the people of Thetis to suffer in the dark. In these dark times, mankind scrambled for a light, any light. Some found comfort in demonic cults that promised power and riches in return for worship. Others prayed to the old gods for forgiveness, begging the great dragons to return to the world. Still others fell so low as to worship the Darkspawn, forming vile cults dedicated to the exaltation of evil in its purest form. It is said that the world wept as its people begged for a savior who would not come. Andraste's followers, however, did not abandon her teachings when she died. The cult of Andraste rescued her sacred ashes from the courtyard in Minrathous after her execution, stealing them away to a secret temple. The location of that temple has long been lost, but the ashes of Andraste served as a symbol of the enduring nature of the faith in the Maker, and humanity could earn the Maker's forgiveness despite its grievous insult to him. With time, the cult of Andraste spread and grew, and the Chant of Light took form. Sing this chant in the four corners of Thetis, it was said, and the world would gain the Maker's attention at last. As the Chant of Light spread, the cult of Andraste became known as the Andrastian Chantry. Those who converted to the Chantry's beliefs found it their mission to spread Andraste's word. There were many converts, including powerful people in the Imperium and in the city-states of what is now Orlais. Such was the power of the Maker's word that the young King Dracon undertook a series of exalted marches meant to unite the city-states and create an empire solely dedicated to the Maker's will. The Orlesian Empire became the seat of the Chantry's power, the Grand Cathedral in Val-Royeaux, the source of the movement that birthed the organized Chantry as we know it today. Dracon, by then Emperor Dracon I, created the Circle of Magi, the Order of Templars, and the Holy Office of the Divine. Many within the Chantry revere him nearly as equal with Andraste herself. The modern Chantry is a thing of faith and beauty, but it is also a house of necessity, protecting Thetis from powerful forces that would do it harm. Where the Grey Wardens protect the world from the Blights, the Chantry protects mankind from itself. Most of all, the Chantry works to earn the Maker's forgiveness, so that one day he will return and transform the world into the paradise it was always meant to be. From Tales of the Destruction of Thetis by Brother Genitivi, Chantry Scholar. Dane and the Werewolf. Let me sing of heroes and honor lost and found, of monsters and men in all forms, of Dane, hunter without peer, feared by the forests of Ferelden, who one autumn morning spied a heart of pure white in beam of warmest sun, a prize for huntsman's spear. Through the greenwood they ran, hart and hunter, bringing the stag to spear at last in long-forgotten grove. Heedless that the chase had waked a hunger in the golden wolf, a werewolf, a creature with mind of man, lured by the hunt and come forth to lay claim to the heart as rightful tribute drawn by the scent of cooling blood. In the silence the two hunters held. Dane, spear-armed against the wolf with all his brood, knew with sinking heart he was lost. Steeled for the winding woods of the fade, then the beast spoke, human-like in voice. You have taken this stag from my woods and my pack, but nothing comes without a cost. The wolf pack circled ever closer, and he who felled boars and bears with his bright blade knew fear. They spoke his name in roars, like gravestones offering a beast's bargain. Die here, huntsman, alone and forgotten, or take my place amongst the wolves as I take your place amongst man. There was a bargain struck, and Dane the wolf pack served in woven form, and the werewolf to his family sped as Dane. 1 year and a day all told, but some things cannot be repent, some coinage cannot be unspent, when hearts are wagered, a fissure rent. From the saga Dane the Werewolf, as recorded by the minstrel Yukam, 485 Black. Death of a Templar. The dry, dusty earth swallows up salty drops that splatter its surface. A tiny insect pauses, sensing the vibrations, and scurries off, leaving behind its invisible enemy. As the drop falls, the dark circles merge together, expressing a mirror to their creator. The primal emotions of bloodlust and sorrow blend into a lethal cocktail that breaks the strongest of men. The jurisdiction of strength must be left to the spirit, not arm nor chest. Only the wisest turn to his inner sanctum to partition the mind from an all-consuming madness. Seductive voices whisper promise of glory weighting down the weaker path of the flesh, bringing a death far worse than that of hot lead or steel. These blank, hollow promises will echo the unfathomable to eternity. Living comfortably amongst material possessions, it is easy to misunderstand the true meaning of uncontrollable hate. Failing to understand the power of fighting against pure, unfaltering beliefs, against foes that listen only to their soul. Uncontrollable hate. Influenced and thus removed from innocence. The scar is permanent and internal. The rain, now red, feeds the debt owed for actions past, seeking further into the earth as the mind draws slower. What was it that drew himself into this situation? The mind ebbs and parts to a lingering memory of true innocence. He entered war as a newborn enters the world, unknowing of both the horrors and the light of the Maker that will save him. The sound of metal sliding along leather comes from above him. From the second he was born to his soon-to-be dying breath, his mind was processing and analyzing knowledge and experiences. It is true that he thought he could be wise in his own eyes, but only the most humble recognizes that he knows very little. Bias, speculation, and all of false pretenses make way to the sound of the sweeping steel, and then finally his soul, as ready as his eyes dry from this final understanding, enters his promise of its purest form. From Death of a Templar by Sir Andrew, Knight of Andraste, and Templar Archivist, 9-4 Dragon. Nulladar Anthology of Dwarven Poetry. The undead exhumed, born from the shallowest graves, mined from the living. That's a haiku! Sorry. By the Paragon Linkar, 744 Storm. Do you like fried mush and nug? I do not like them, Mr. Klug. I do not like fried mush and nug. Would you eat them on a rug? If you eat, you'll get a hug. I would not eat them on a rug. For you, I would not want a hug. Or from you, I would not want a hug. Then would you drink them from a jug? Come on, give them a chug. I would not drink them from a jug. I'd rather eat a slimy slug. Oh my god, the dwarves had Dr. Seuss. Would you eat them with a bug? Would you share them with a thug? I would not share them with a thug. I would not eat them with a bug. Not for a hug, not on a rug. From a jug, I will not chug. Come on now, Mr. Klug. Are you on some kind of drug? Eat them in this hole I dug. Eat them, don't just shrug. I've had it, Mr. Klug. Down into that hole you dug, down with the thug and the slug and the bug. From Paragon Seuss! 212 Glory! Ah! I love that! Oh, amongst all of this lot of text that brought me so much joy. Never surrender, dwarvish blood may be lukewarm, but vital as ore. From Paragon Lynch Carr, there we go, 748 Storm. There was once a miner of Lyrium, whose face looked like a perennium. The dead got him too, not much he could do, with a face like that he was a shoo-in. By the wordsmith Carlall of House Yaunuk, 911 Dragon. The First Blight, Chapter 2. Oh. I wish I could split this into 2 parts, but I can't. I just can't. So, Codex mega episode, I guess. People today have little concept of the consequences of the second sin. Oh, believe me when I say that when asked, pious chantry-going folk will curse the use of foul magic, spitting and snapping their fingers, but none live today who actually remember the horror that was unleashed so very long ago. Whatever records might have existed regrettably did not survive the chaos and ignorance that was to follow. We have only the tales of survivors handed down through the murky ages and the dogma of the chantry to instruct us, and that is precious little indeed. I believe I am not understanding when I say that the second sin unleashed is the bane of all life upon Thedas. The Darkspawn are more virulent than the worst plague, a heartless force of nature that came into our world like an ill wind. We know from accounts of later blights, as these Darkspawn invasions came to be called, never has a more appropriate name existed, that the Darkspawn spread disease and famine wherever they tread. The earth itself is corrupted by their presence, the sky roiling with angry black clouds. I do not exaggerate, my friends, when I say that a mass gathering of Darkspawn is an omen of dread cataclysm. It is said that those cursed magisters who became the first Darkspawn scratched at the very earth to find solace in the darkness of the dwarven deep roads, and there in the shadows they multiplied. Whether by intelligent design or by some last vestige of worship in their minds, they attempted to locate the old gods they had once served. They found what they sought, Damat, first among the old gods, once known as the Dragon of Silence, before the Maker imprisoned him and all his brethren beneath the earth for the first sin, usurping the Maker's place in mankind's hearts. The slumbering dragon awoke, freed from the Maker's prison by his twisted followers, and became corrupted himself. Damat was transformed into the first archdemon, his great and terrible power given will by a rotting, unholy mind. With the Darkspawn horde following, Damat rose and took wing in the skies once again, bringing ruin to the world the Maker had created. The old god had become the eye of a dark storm that would ravage the entire world. From Tales of Destruction of Thedas, by Brother Chenetivi, Chantry Scholar. I wish I had some water right here, right now. The First Blight, Chapter 3. The world during the First Blight was different from the world we know today. Aside from the civilized rule of the Imperium, humans as a race were largely barbarous and splintered, divided into clans and tribes, and squabbling amongst ourselves for resources. At the same time, deep beneath Thedas' great mountain ranges spanned dwarven culture as organized and advanced as ours was primitive. As the Darkspawn bubbled up to the surface from their underground lairs, mankind first buckled and then fought back. The armies of Tevinter attempted to face down the multitudes of twisted creatures and the horrid rotting of the land around them, but they could not be everywhere at once. Human history remembers the First Blight as a time of terrible devastation, and those stories are accurate, but in our arrogance we often forget the price paid by the dwarves and their isolated mountain kingdoms. The dwarves faced far greater hordes than humanity as the Darkspawn challenged them for control of the underground. Despite the might and technology the dwarves brought to bear, the savage Darkspawn tore through them, first destroying the more remote taigs before swallowing up entire kingdoms. Think of it, an entire civilization lost in the space of decades. Compared to the near genocide that the dwarves faced, what we humans called the First Blight must have seemed a mere skirmish. Against the Darkspawn, the dwarven lands have always borne the brunt of the fighting and the majority of the sacrifices. 4 dwarven kingdoms finally managed to combine their might and fight back, and that cooperation saved them. But for the rest of their lands it was too late. The Darkspawn had taken the deep roads, the majestic underground passages that linked the dwarven lands throughout Thedas. The Darkspawn could now attack anywhere on the surface through these tunnels. Humanity simply was not prepared for such an onslaught. It was clear that the warfare we knew would not avail us. We had to find a new way to fight. Thus came our salvation. The Grey Wardens were born. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. The First Blight, Chapter 4. Founded at Weishaupt Fortress in the Anderfels, the Grey Wardens offered humanity hope in its darkest hour. Veterans of decades of battle with the Darkspawn came together, and the best amongst them pledged to do whatever was necessary to stem the tide of darkness that swept across the land. These great humans, elves, and dwarves pooled their knowledge of the enemy and formed a united front to put a stop to the Archdemon's rampage. And stop it they did. Ballads are still sung today of the first Grey Warden charge into the waves of Darkspawn at the city of Nordbotten, each warden facing 10 or 20 Darkspawn at a time. Squadrons of Grey Wardens mounted on their mighty griffins, soaring through the blackened skies and battling some terrible archdemon with spear and spell. Oh, what a sight it must have been. Incredibly, the Grey Wardens won that first battle. They raised their arms in victory, and suddenly there was hope. The Grey Wardens led the lands of men and the last stalwart defenders of the dwarven halls against the hordes of the archdemon Dumat for the next 100 years, gaining and losing ground, but never backing away. From all over Thedas, they recruited whoever possessed the skill and strength to raise the Grey Warden's banner, making no distinction between elven slave or human nobleman, and finally, nearly 2 centuries after the first old god rose from the earth, the Grey Wardens assembled the armies of men and dwarves at the Battle of Silent Fields. It was then that Dumat finally fell and the First Blight ended. The Tevinter Imperium would face a new challenge with the coming of the prophet Andraste. Thoughts of the Blight grew distant. With Dumat's defeat, the Darkspawn were no longer considered a threat, but with the wisdom of hindsight, we know that conceit proved foolish indeed. The task of the Grey Wardens was far from over. From the Tales of Destruction of Thedas, by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. The Maker's First Children. The Maker's first creations were the spirits, the glorious beings that populated the many spires of the Golden City, and the Chant of Light says that they revered the Maker with unquestioning devotion. The Maker, however, was dissatisfied. Although the spirits were like him in that they could manipulate the ether and create form from it, they did not do so. They had no urge to create, and even when instructed to do so, possessed no imagination to give their creations ingenuity or life. The Maker realized his own folly. He had created the spirits to resemble him in all but the one and most important way. They did not have a spark of the divine within them. He expelled all the spirits out of the Golden City and into the Fade and proceeded to his next creation, life. The Maker created the world and the living beings upon it, separated the Fade by the veil. His new children would be unable to shape the world around them, and thus would need to struggle to survive. In return for their struggle, the Maker gave them the spark of the divine, a soul, and he watched with pleasure as his creations flourished and showed all the ingenuity he had hoped for. The spirits grew jealous of the living and coaxed them into the Fade when they slept. The spirits wished to know more of life, hoping to find a way to regain the Maker's favor. Through the eyes of the living, they experienced new concepts: love, fear, pain, and hope. The spirits reshaped the Fade to resemble the lives and concepts that they saw, each spirit desperately trying to bring the most dreamers to their own realm so they could vicariously possess a spark of the divine through them. As the spirits grew in power, however, some of them became contemptuous of the living. These were the spirits that saw the darkest parts of the dreamers. Their lands were places of torment and horror, and they knew that the living were strongly drawn to places that mirrored those dark parts of themselves. These spirits questioned the Maker's wisdom and proclaimed the living inferior. They learned from the darkness they saw and became the first demons. Rage, hunger, sloth, desire, pride. These are the dark parts of the soul that gave demons their power. There are no demons of envy? The hooks they used to claw their way into the world of the living. It was demons that whispered into the minds of men, convincing them to turn from the Maker and worship false gods. They seek to possess all life as their due, forging kingdoms of nightmare in the Fade, in the hopes of one day storming the walls of heaven itself. And the Maker despaired once again, for he had given the power of creation to his new children, and in return they had created sin. From the Maker's First Children, by Bader, Senior Enchanter of Ostwick, 812 blessed. I just had a thought. Maybe there's not a demon of envy, because that's an underlying feature for all of them, based on this? That would make sense. The sermons of Divine Renata the First. The weakness of mortal will is the great failing of all the Maker's children. We trade our honor as if it were the cheapest of currency. We do not understand what integrity is or what it is truly worth. From this ignorance, original sin was born. At some time, each of us has thought, what does it matter if I keep hold of my integrity? I am but one mortal. I am powerless. How blind we all are. The virtue of a single slave destroyed the Tevinter Imperium. The dishonor of one man drove the Maker from our sight. I tell you truly, nothing but the integrity of our hearts will win the love of the Maker back to us. It is all the power we shall ever possess to change this world for good or for ill. From a sermon on integrity. Drion's Journal. To Ferventus. Notice Gorham running around trying to get pieces of my siblings' ceremonial army ready for the feast. Armor, not army. Stopped him and asked him how preparations were going. He mentioned that one of the bracers has a spot of tarnish on it. Was quite impressed at his dedication. He is the most loyal to our family. 23 Ferventus. Was on way to discuss the treaty with father when came across a messenger waiting in the hall. On being asked why he was loitering about the royal palace, he mumbled something about having a gift for the new commander, and asked me, begged almost, to pass along some object or other to my sibling. Me, the heir to the throne of Orzammar, does not run errands for a messenger. Must have been new on the job. Had him thrown out. However, still reeling from the gall of it. Learned later that Balin had told Messenger that the quickest way to get things to our sibling was through me, and had made him wait until I came by. So unseemly for a prince of Orzammar to play such tricks. He needs to grow up and understand that as royalty, he has responsibilities. 24 Ferventus. Found Balin's little playmate, again, lurking in the corridors outside his bedroom this morning. Must have been trying to steal something, or already had. Bosom seemed fuller than most decent ladies. Some jewels hidden in the bodice? Anyway, pretended not to see her. Would have been awkward otherwise. Wish Balin would keep her confined to his room, if he must have her around. Little brother is too concerned with fun and pleasure, and not serious enough about his duties as a prince. Must talk to him about discipline when have time. Unfortunately, much too busy with the many tasks father has laid upon my shoulders. 26 Ferventus. Remembered to send small token of gratitude to Jaelia Helmi. Alliance between Helmi and Iduken must be kept strong. Lady Jaelia will of course accept proposal of marriage, since will be king sooner or later, but never hurts to be polite and keep the lady happy. Hear that there are some surfacers selling silks. Maybe we'll send second out for something nice. Jaelia's favorite color, turquoise. 28 Ferventus. Heard about there being provings held in our siblings' honor. They did not have provings for me at my first commission, and I am the heir. What is going on? Must watch these provings make presence felt. Orzammar must not forget that I am to be her next king. From the Journal of Trian Iduken. Cautionary Tales for the Adventurous. We're almost there. Now we just have the notes, and I don't think the notes are typically long. It was then that he realized he wasn't alone. The abandoned camp in front of him was unbelievably welcoming, like a mirage. The fire felt like a warm hand grabbing his heart. It reminded him of a previous life, so long ago, when he was happy. Running on the sunflower fields with his boy, the sun on his face. Laying next to the fireplace with his beautiful wife in his arms. He felt a sharp pain in his heart. His thoughts shifted to that fateful day when everything changed. Blood was everywhere. He held the body of his dead wife in his arms. Around him the ashes of his burned house, fell like snow. The stench was terrible. It smelled like darkspawn. He grabbed his axe, touched the icy, cold hands of his boy, and left. He would kill them. He would kill them all. The pain in his heart was unbearable. He opened his eyes and saw the second most terrifying thing he would ever see in his life. A shadowy wraith leaning over him, leeching his life away. Around him, the camp was gone, replaced by something familiar, almost peaceful. Bones, death, and despair. He wondered if all his life had been an illusion, if he'd ever had a family. For a brief moment, he felt relief. You can't lose something you've never had. But being this close to death brought clarity. He knew it was real. Everything else was the illusion. You could see a smile on his torn face. He had been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. He lifted his weak arms, grasped the demon's face, and kissed it. It felt like kissing a cloud made of sand and dust. Suddenly, all sorrow left him, and with it, the last bit of life he had. Before his limp body hit the ground, it was all over. He was finally free. From Cautionary Tales for the Adventurous, by Brother Ramos Gilhern, 794 Storm. What? Okay, so just to get those. Why is Kaylin's documents 1, 2, and 3? That's weird. But okay. I'm doing those in order. To His Majesty King Kaelin of Ferelden, my warden commander assures me that we face a blight. This thing threatens us both, and we must work together to fight it, lest it devour us all. Our two nations have not had a happy history, but that is all it is, history. It is the future that is at stake now. Let us put aside our father's disagreements so that we may secure the future for both our countries. My chevaliers stand ready and will accompany the Grey Wardens of Orlais to Ferelden. At your word, the might of Orlais will march to reinforce the Ferelden forces. Sincerely, Empress Celine I. An official letter from Empress Celine I of Orlais to King Kaelin of Ferelden. Your Majesty, my men will arrive as soon as possible to bolster your forces. Maker willing, this blight will be ended before it has begun. Kaelin, I beseech you, as your uncle, not to join the Grey Wardens on the field. You cannot afford to take this risk. Ferelden cannot afford it. Let me remind you again that you do not have an heir. Your death, and it pains me even to think of it, would plunge Ferelden into chaos. And yes, perhaps when this is over you will allow me to bring up the subject of your heir. While a son from both the Theron and Mactyr lines would unite Ferelden like no other, we must accept that perhaps this can never be. The Queen approaches her 30th year, and her ability to give you a child lessens with each passing month. I submit to you again that it might be time to put Honora aside. We parted harshly the last time I spoke of this, but it has been a full year since then, and nothing has changed. Please, nephew, consider my word, and Andraste's grace be with you. A letter from Arl Eamon to King Kaelin. With how in love he was with Honora, I can understand why he got a little upset. This letter appears to have been crumpled, then carefully smoothed out and folded again. Kaelin, the visit to Ferelden will be postponed indefinitely due to the Darkspawn problem. You understand, of course. The Darkspawn have odd timing, don't they? Let us deal with them first. Once that is done, we can further discuss a permanent alliance between Orlais and Ferelden. A note written in an uncharacteristically familiar tone from Empress Celine the First to King Kaelin. Should have expected some duplicity from Orlais, because they're Orlais. Tattered shopping list. Sugar, wheat flour, fillet knife, ginger for grandpa's flatulence, ink, cod liver oil, dried mushrooms, rouge, or legion. Also remember to ask if more beeswax will be available soon. Graffiti in Redcliffe's Tavern. Don't eat the cheese! The Black Vials. Binding the First Corpse Walker. Let the dead no longer serve your whim. Bound by your true name, no mortal hand shall reach you. Kel Viazga. Sorry, I had a moment of, didn't I read this? But no, there are just a lot of things similar. Revenant and perversion of an only son. Death beyond death is no longer your stepping stone through the veil. Andraste hold you, demon, and bind your rage for eternity. I'm gonna stop reading the thing about the thumbprints. Unless they change. 6, 6, 6, 5, 6. Okay. Binding the third. Where's the second? This realm denies you abomination for taking our dearest. We are united against your kind and bind you by your true name. Ogruth Masad, revenant and perversion of a treasured mother. No more shall fall, no more shall need to stand. Andraste hold you, demon, and bind your rage for eternity. Binding of the Fourth Corpse Walker. You deny our dead their rest, and so you also will be hounded. Let the strength of our union bind you in your true name. Pometha Kagat, revenant and perversion of an honored father. Though no spirit cage will undo what was suffered, Andraste hold you, demon, and bind your rage for eternity. Binding the 5th corpse walker. We condemn both spirit and host for inviting the walker. With solemn hearts we bind you by your true name. Shamas, good son, revenant and perversion of a rare friendship. Regret holds more pain than burying the dead. Andraste forgive you, brother, and bind your weakness for eternity. Binding the 6th corpse walker. United we purge this realm of your corruption. The smallest among us binds you by your true name. Anton Wither, revenant and perversion of a friend not met. Your strength and guile denied by innocence. Andraste hold you, demon, and bind your rage for eternity. Correspondence interruptus. Oh, these are all the love letters! A collection of embarrassing personal communications between the spoiled wealthy and their objects of obsession. I feel like I might have read some of these, but each message itself appears to be short. My darling Reginald, I burn for you, and because of you. Please use the enclosed tincture if our love is to endure. Seri. To Wereth Lowstone. Age, race, height, I care not for the differences others perceive. But matching your helmet to my tunic for the amusement of standing in line with your new silent sisters invited attention where none was desired. I will not suffer your company again. Allison Highover. Gonna miss knocking heads with those girls. A delicate matter. While I am overjoyed by the prospect of having you, an unwelcome guest requires that you excuse yourself by the postern of my estate to avoid a mark upon our reputation. M. Darling, when next we meet, I would find it agreeable for you to leave your hat on, and mayhap your boots as well, and trousers. Sure too. And I shall facilitate said closed status by locking my door and posting a guard. Duly warned? X. My elf root, the herbalist suggested powdered brontohorn. I was very discreet. Your sunflower. Donegan, on pain of death, you are now warned. My father found the letters you previously sent and is watching as I write to tell you our relations are over. We must remain chaste. Patricia. You are filthy, a beast. Such depravity I have never been forced to suffer. How words are so laden when they leave your lips is beyond decent imagining. Madam, I love you. Sir Algold. My dearest Virginia True Royal. Regarding bodice ripped. Enclosed are 7 silver and my most heartfelt apologies for said bodice. I would blame the cold ocean spray, the loss of my favorite shirt, the bucking of the stallion, or perhaps the strain of maintaining all such elements while sitting for a portrait, but I was certainly not myself. I hope you will forgive me and not take it upon yourself to find your own determined way in this world. Yours, Sir Rival Grousman. Dear Sir John, your ministrations, while well-intentioned, hold no promise. Do not despair, for it is not you, it is of me. I require an interval to acquaint myself with the personage you awakened. I am certain we can maintain an amiable accord, that engagements with our mutual associations will not be awkward. Mari. I love that they parody stuff in this. I truly do. They have an actual Dear John letter. I love it. To one's paramour. When last we embraced, one noticed the redolence of another's company, but one was unmindful. His most eminent Sir Father Hapsmith Oswald III. I'm regretting this. My love, I long to dance you beneath the moonlight, our hearts beating like the paired wings of a dove, in concert with the glory of the Maker and the beauty of the world that we must shepherd in his absence. Join me in a purity that will last the ages, when the brothers mark the chant of light anew. With all my soul, Eric Denolvin. Scrawled below, Otter's pocket, he's earned it tonight. Promises of pride. Uldred will show us the way. Finally, recognition within the circle and freedom from the scornful eye of the Templars. We will not be shunned. Be ready. Enchanter Gravid, Libertarian. I have spoken with him directly. His intentions are that we will demand the Templars' withdrawal. I don't know that I am willing to follow, but I will be present to hear his argument. Enchanter Faunst, Equitarian. Madness. I doubt blood will be of use to you if it is flowing down the tower steps. Step away from this folly before it consumes us all. Enchanter Leuven, Loyalist. The call is made. We will stride out of here with pride in our step, regardless of the outcome. This is for the good of the circle. Uldred will see to it. And finally, extracurricular studies. I have the utmost sympathy for what happened to your charge, but It is beyond the Circle's ability to anticipate every obscure demise that an apprentice might face, especially involving methods outside the already extensive realm of magical study. We simply don't have the room for additional training facilities, and there are concerns about becoming too inclusive that I will not elaborate on. Your request is denied. First Enchanter Sinclair. Notice herewith that the exercise area on the 4th floor shall serve as permanent berthing for the Templar garrison stationed at the tower. Since facilities that accommodate their particular training requirements are already on hand, they will be assuming an even closer watch over Circle affairs. Enchanter Bergen's optional weapons training is cancelled until further notice. Enchanter Bergen has additionally stepped down from his teaching duties. And that is it. Oh my god, that was a lot of reading. So next time, we will be jumping back into the main game, but for now, if you liked what you saw, leave a like, leave a comment. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Maybe tap that notification bell to get notified every time I upload. See you on the flip side. Elisa out.